So I figured I'd start this one by giving an idea of where I'm currently at with the Dark Pictures anthology. Obviously, you guys are aware of the issues that I had with Man of Medan. There's a full review of it on the channel, but long story short, I didn't personally care for that one too much. And then there's Little Hope. I'm not sure, honestly, what happened with Little Hope. It was something that I was planning on reviewing or sharing my opinion of in some way. And obviously, that never happened. I don't know if it was something that I just, got super busy with something else and spaced it out entirely. I don't know if I had assumed that at some point I had already previously done something with it, which obviously wasn't the case. But nevertheless, I loved Little Hope. I think comparatively to Man of Medan, it does a lot of things right, or at the very least better. I think you have a very individualized cast of characters with clashing personalities that you're either going to like or you're going to hate. I think they got the pace of the narrative nailed down pretty well, and most importantly, they managed to keep all the mystery and the twists and everything until the end of the game, which, of course, was a huge gripe that I had about the last one. Which, speaking of, that twist was pretty awesome. The way that they did it psychologically messed with my head a little bit. I had to think about it. I'd spent the entire game kind of trying to figure out in my own head how they were going to manage to connect three groups of identical people across vastly different time periods together, and the way they did it, I definitely didn't see coming. And it blew my mind a little bit. So yeah, I loved Little Hope. Greatly appreciate Little Hope, and I think currently it probably sits as my favorite of the series thus far. But that, of course, takes us to House of Ashes, which I also like a fair amount. This is a story that takes place, I believe, in 2004 in the Middle East. Of course, this is, a time period where 9/11 and the war in Iraq are very prevalent, so this story is centered around the military. I think, again, you have a pretty solid cast of characters. There's a character for every role here. You have a previously married couple who are the leaders of the group, who are trying to, on one hand, sort out their personal issues, and on the other, remain professional and authoritative. There is a gentleman who has PTSD stuff going on due to a mishap during a previous mission. Things obviously didn't go right. Mistakes happened, so he's dealing with that and processing through that. There is a gentleman who I'm just going to say is very patriotic. Like I said, 9/11 is still very, very fresh in everybody's mind here. So he is of the opinion of America good, Middle East bad, you know, down with terrorists, everybody from the Middle East is the same, damn them for what they did to us, that kind of mentality. And there's also somebody from the other side of the coin who is just a normal guy, right? He's just a dad from the Middle East who's having some issues with his son that he's trying to figure out, but in the midst of that, he is called into action. And this is a story very much about the idea of camaraderie, about brotherhood. Really, I think it's about, you know, setting aside your differences, laying down your prejudices, and remembering that no matter what's going on situationally, we are all human beings. We're all just trying to survive, and it's really about coming together as allies in the face of a much deadlier enemy than human versus human. Excuse me. In this case, it's vampires, which automatically gets a thumbs up from me because I love me a good old-fashioned creature feature. So, I do have some negatives, and I'll start with the more minor, brief one. There are some instances of dialogue that come across a bit awkward, particularly with the separated couple. I get that you obviously want to sort out your feelings and figure out what your situation is and where you both stand and kind of how that's going to affect your future and affect your marriage and all that. I get that. And I get the whole, you know, they're trying to establish the relationship between these two characters, the strain between these two characters, and I get the whole thing from a development standpoint. But maybe you don't want to do that when you are a couple 100 feet below the surface of the earth, separated from your unit while being hunted by these creatures. And it just seems to me that a lot of those sort of dialogue exchanges lack a little bit of situational awareness, where it's like I said, like I get why you want to have these conversations, but it's like, is this really the appropriate time to be discussing these things? And they just kind of stuck out to me as kind of awkward and kind of humorous in a way, which I know they weren't supposed to, because obviously it's a very humanized, serious situation, but so yeah, that would be my minor negative. My bigger one with House of Ashes is the twist at the end. So the thing that I've noticed about the Dark Pictures anthology as a whole is that whatever their twist is, it seems to be focused a lot more on logical outcomes. For instance, like the ship in Man of Medan wasn't actually haunted. There was a chemical that was leaking out, causing everybody to hallucinate. In Little Hope, the whole thing was actually taking place inside the mind of the lone survivor of a trauma that affected his family. And with this one, apparently they just they couldn't go the route of like an Until Dawn, where it's just like the Wendigos are there because of the myths and the legends of the Wendigos. They had to kind of explain it away, and I guess they chose to do that through making the vampires aliens. I'm not real sure how that legitimizes them or makes them any more logical, but that's what they did. Somebody correct me, set me straight if I'm wrong here. But if I remember correctly, thinking back to my college days, in my mythology class, I believe Sumerian myth, which this game is centered around, has a lot to do with space and planets and star constellations and that kind of subject matter. So it makes sense, I guess. If that's the case, I guess it makes logical sense that, you know, they're aliens, because it fits into that theme of that sort of mythos, and so I'll give you that. But at the same time, I'm like, I enjoyed them. I enjoyed this story so thoroughly because, you know, they were vampires. They were actually there. They actually allowed them to be there, and it was a straight up man versus monster type scenario, which we haven't gotten with the other two games previously. So I was riding high on that, and then I get to the end, and they're aliens, and I feel like that happens a lot in horror. You know, at some point, monsters, good old-fashioned monsters, just aren't good enough, and it's like somebody's like, you know what would be awesome? Vampires. But you know what would be cooler than vampires? Alien vampires. And it's just like, why couldn't they just be vampires for the sake of being vampires? So just because of my personal tastes and kind of my preferences and beliefs, that really brought the game down for me. I found that twist to be very disappointing and almost frustrating. So yeah, but I did like it. I don't think, because of the way I feel about the narrative, that it beats Little Hope. So if you want to keep track, I would say House of Ashes is probably second. And I say that because actually the new one, Devil in Me, I believe it's called, comes out very, very soon. So, so I'm going to be able to talk about that in a matter of no time, really. So, yeah, if you want to keep track of these and rank these, I think it would go Little Hope is my number one, House of Ashes for my number two, Man of Medan for my least favorite, and we'll see where the new one sits. But yeah, all in all, I did enjoy this game, and yeah, that's my review of House of Ashes. Until next time, guys, we'll see you later.